And so that wisdom, that application of knowledge, right? That taking it to its conclusion, the things that they can't know because they haven't done it yet, right? They need people like us to walk with them in their lives and help them understand, like, hey, if you make this decision, here's what might happen as a consequence. What is up, guys? RLTK PHX Podcast, Real Talk Phoenix, episode 15.
15 in the books.
We're on the journey, man. We are moving and shaking. We're excited about what's happening. We're excited about what's happening in the life of our organization. And so you guys may have noticed, based on some of the things you've been seeing on social, some of the things we've been posting and putting out, you may have noticed that we've made a slight shift and a slight change in the way that we want to speak to you guys and walk with you guys and journey with you in influencing Gen Z. And so today we wanted to talk about influencers. Like, what does that mean, and what makes you an influencer, and why influence is important, and how can we move forward together? And so just to give you guys a little bit of backstory, because maybe this is your first time tuning into a podcast, we've been having these conversations, and specifically these conversations have been shaped around parents engaging teenagers. And the reason we did that is because we spend time on high school campuses. We've had hundreds of conversations with hundreds, if not thousands of students. And what we found is that they want to have deep, meaningful conversations at home. We've been having deep, meaningful conversations with them on campus around controversial issues. And the whole goal was to build connection, build trust, build relationship, talk about things that matter, create a safe space. And in that space, dialogue and help discern what truth is and be in positive, powerful influence that could help a Gen Zer make more fruitful decisions in terms of how they're going to go about living their life in the future, right? Their world is ever-changing, technology, the pornification of culture, all different types of things that we've talked about in the past 14 episodes. And so, as we dialogued and thought about this even more, we thought to ourselves, man, we stopped a little bit short. Because it's not just parents that are trying to influence this generation. There are all types of people in all different types of spaces and places, whether they have positions of power or not, whether they're parents or not, aunts, uncles, foster people, therapists, counselors, you name it, coaches, teachers. They're all over the place. There are all different people in all different places trying to influence this next generation in positive and powerful ways so that they will go on and change the world the way they were designed and destined to, right? And so what we want to do is come alongside you and aid you in that goal. So we're preparing people of influence to engage the next generation, and that generation is Generation Z. And so what we wanted to do today is just talk a little bit more about that. And so, what does it mean to be an influencer?
Well, as you were saying earlier, we were talking about the different categories of people that might come into the life of a teenager. It's not just a parent. That's why we changed the platform. And rather than saying, okay, are you a teacher? Are you a social worker? Are you a coach? And thinking of all the different categories. For me, when I think about influencer, I try to think about what's going on inside of a person when they think about another person and wanting to impact their life. You got to have, you know what I mean? You have to do something to have influence. And so we were thinking about there's got to be this sense of burden, this sense of responsibility that you have for another person. And that has to be the thing that's the first kind of foundational thing that makes you an influencer or makes you want to be an influencer anyways. You feel this sense of responsibility, this burden for someone.
And I think about what produces that in somebody. And as I look at my own life, what produced it in me, it was that I felt that sense of lostness as a young person. Right? I felt that sense of like, dang, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going. There are all these choices and all these decisions I have to make that are going to have implications on my life. And I think about like some of the Gen Zers that I'm engaging with now that are really having trouble just making decisions. Like, man, I'm stressed about where I'm going to go to college. I'm stressed about where I'm going to work. I'm stressed about what decision I'm going to make. I'm stressed about whether I'm going to move out and I have all these options. What do I do? And I think it comes part and parcel of like seeing everybody else make decisions and feeling like you're not making good decisions yourself. But I felt that as a young person, and then coming out on the other side and actually having a level of success and thinking to myself, man, how can I pass that on to the next generation? How can I help make sure that they're successful? How can I help make sure that they achieve what they want to achieve? How can I help make sure that they get to do what they're passionate about the same way I get to do what I'm passionate about? Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And so that burden was birthed out of my own story to a certain degree.
Yeah, and the reality is that there can be all sorts of people that have influence in the life of a Gen Z or in a teenager's life, and the question is, are you a good influencer, right? Because there's two different ways I look at influence. There's a person that has influence in your life because they have a position. They're your boss, they're your teacher, they're your coach, whatever. Like they signed up for a role, they signed up for a position. But then, can you really control matters of the heart, right? Say you're an older person, you're an aunt, you're an uncle, whatever, you don't necessarily have a position, so to speak. Maybe you feel like that's a position, but that's just a God-given thing, right? Or maybe you're the person who, for whatever reason, you always speak up at the events about a specific thing, or in your family context, whatever that is. So there's the positional situation, you've been given authority, and then there's just that God-given sense of authority, sense of responsibility, whatever it is for a person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when I think about people who are maybe watching this podcast and they're asking themselves like, I wonder if I'm an influencer. If you're asking that question, you're probably an influencer.
Yeah, you probably are.
Yeah. So what we're saying is, how can I have a good influence? How can I have a positive influence? And how can I take all this empathy or concern or whatever it is that I feel on the inside for this young person? How can I take all of that and kind of coordinate that in a way that's beneficial to this person?
That's good, man.
You know what I mean?
Good. Yeah. Having those regular interactions with a Gen Zer means you're probably a person of influence, right? Like you were saying.
Exactly.
And if you're asking yourself that question, you're probably a person of influence. And so, like you said, it comes more down to a matter of what are you doing with that influence and how do you steward it well, right?
Right.
Because like, if you have interaction with a Gen Z, you're probably influencing them in some way, shape, or form, just like you have interaction with anybody else. But the question always is, to what end? Right? In what direction? And how are you influencing them? And so I think sometimes we don't think about that enough. Think about our behaviors, think about our practices in front of them, think about the things that we're demonstrating.
For sure.
That may be influencing them in a particular direction. And you know how it is. It tends to be more about what you don't say than what you do say. It tends to be more about how you live, right?
Right.
Do as I say, not as I do. Doesn't really what, does it?
No.
You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so, why does influence even matter?
Yeah.
And why does it even matter?
Well, I mean, influence matters because, like I said, you can have people in your life for a period of time, and they'll follow your leadership, especially if you care about them. But if you're not good, if you don't have a good influence in that person's life, the point that they sense that they have freedom to get out from under you, they're gone.
Yeah, it's good, man.
And so for me, the thing that sticks out first and foremost is the reason that influence matters so much, especially in the life of a young person, is they're not young forever. That window is going to close. And they're going to remember those people who invested in them. And so the question is, when they remember that, do they remember that with fondness, or do they remember that like you're the person that put the chip on their shoulder?
Dang.
Right? Now, either way, those are good ways to have an influence in a person's life. But I think that the reason people listening to this podcast want to have influence is because they want to have a better relationship.
That's good.
Not because they want to be the negative person in a young person's life that motivated them and put a chip on their shoulder.
Or whatever else.
Right? Or discouraged them.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
Yeah, so I think that would be a major reason. I think there's all sorts of people who want to have influence, right? But you want to have a positive influence. You want to have a lasting influence.
Yeah.
And so in order to have that, you have to act quickly. You can't just wait around until you get the courage to start engaging someone.
Yeah.
You have to recognize what the moment is calling for. The moment is calling for action. They're not going to be young forever. So your window is small. And if you really want to have impact, if you really want to do what you say you want to do, you really got to take this thing seriously, right? Like you got to that's how I think about it. You know what I mean?
It's okay to be afraid, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a sense of fear about influencing teens all the time. Like, dang, what if I say the wrong thing? What if, they're smarter than me? Or what if, they have to correct me or whatever else? But I think that gets into a little bit of our method conversation and how it alleviates some of that. But the reality is you can only have courage in the face of fear, right?
Right.
And so we're not saying, like, we need to acknowledge the fact that we're afraid. Like,
right.
This generation's intimidating. They got technology out the wazoo. They know a bunch of stuff.
Right.
Their world's completely different from our world, right? And they're looking at the world completely different now. And they want to be social entrepreneurs. They want to change the world. They want to do crazy stuff. They're thinking about the world completely different. They're calling everybody okay boomer and Karen. Like, I'm sitting here having a conversation with a student earlier. He was like, yeah, man. He works at Chick-fil-A. He's like, man, I love working at Chick-fil-A, but like I have to deal with a bunch of Karens all day. They come in and like, no.
Maybe you should explain what a Karen is for our audience members who don't quite understand.
So Karen is from that meme, right? It's from the woman who called the police, right? Because she was complaining all the time. And so anybody basically who complains about something now is a Karen, right?
Right.
And so basically he was saying it because he has people who come in and they're like, oh man, I asked for 3 ketchups, not 4. I asked for 5 ketchups, not 3. You know what I'm saying? He's like, man, they just get so uptight and upset. And he's like, okay, Karen. You know what I'm saying? And so like they have this completely different language even now that's based on memes and sound bites. And so, yeah, it can be intimidating to engage with them, but all the more we're called to do it, right?
Right, absolutely.
We're called to hand down something to this next generation in the same way hopefully something was handed down to us. Or perhaps it wasn't handed down to us and we see the negative impact that had on our lives. And we say to ourselves, man, I'm not going to let that happen to the people that come after me.
Right, that's good.
Right? And so our influence matters, right? Like you said, Gen Z is not waiting. I think about the reality that the world is completely different from the way that we've ever seen it before, right? And we keep talking about this distribution of trust, this reality that no longer do people, or no longer does Gen Z specifically listen to the person in the position of authority. They don't care. Right. They don't care about the person who sits on top and tells them what to do because they have this thing in their hand called an iPhone or an Android or whatever it is that they have that they can get way better information from than the person that's probably telling them what they're telling them. Right?
You're being fact-checked real time as you speak.
Right? And
so if you say some nonsense as an adult,
they're going to know. And here's the reality. They'd much rather listen to the consensus of their community than you.
Right.
And so what that means is we have to go, well, once again, that's actually not a terrible thing because if we think about it, right, there have been abuses when it comes to the pipeline system, right? So there have been people who've sat in positions of authority and used that position of authority to take advantage of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
We see it happen all the time. We've seen it happen in all the institutions that exist, right? Unfortunately. Now, in the same way, right, so now we have this cool thing where, like, there's a community that's driving the community, which is cool, which is good. Everybody's accountable to everybody else. Right. But the problem with that is, what if the community itself is actually wrong? Right. So what if the community is into the wrong thing, but you have 100,000 people saying that this is a good thing? Absolutely. And so this is the point, right? Gen Z has access to a bunch of knowledge, but no wisdom. That's right. Right? They don't have people that are telling them like, hey, so when I was your age, here's what happened when I went down this road, and it might not be on a larger scale. Or when I was your age, and I was talking to this young girl or this young guy, and we were thinking about doing this and that. Here are the problems, and here are the issues that we ran into, and here are the things that happened. And so that wisdom, that application of knowledge, right? That taking it to its conclusion, the things that they can't know because they haven't done it yet, right? They need people like us to walk with them in their lives and help them understand, like, hey, if you make this decision, here's what might happen as a consequence. You know why? Because I did it, and that's what happened. Or I have a friend who did it, and that's what happened. And now they're in jail, or they're not alive anymore, or now they have 3 kids, or now the thing that they had in their heart to do, they never got to do. Do you know what I'm saying? And so, like, helping them understand, like, the decisions that they're making now have a real world impact on the life that they're presently living and the future that they may have is super important, right? And they need people to help them understand that. And here's the thing, too, that we don't want to do. And I think this is part of what happens when we do the distribution of trusting. We have to be really careful when we're having these conversations with Gen Zers. And I think the reason why we have to be careful is because we get into these conversations and we're talking about whatever we're talking about, and we're pressing our ideas on them because we care about them, right? Because we love them, because we want them to make the right decision, because we don't want them to make the same mistakes we did. But what ends up happening is, because they see the world a different way, it actually ends up propelling them away and causing them to make the decision that we don't want them to make in rebellion. Right. And what we really want, right? Like, these kids are knowledgeable, they're intelligent, they're probably way more mature than we were in their age because of the things that they've seen and because of the way globalization is making them mature really quickly, right? Right. And so what we have to help them recognize is that there's a sense of responsibility and implication with the decisions that you make. Right. And so what I'm trying to help you understand is, okay, if you believe this or if you want to do this, cool. But here is the responsibility that you have in doing that, and here's what can happen as a consequence. Right. Now you make a decision.
Absolutely. And I think when I think about the wisdom aspect of it, when people thought about the things that they would pass on to their kids in generations past, it normally centered around knowledge
Hmm.
because access to knowledge wasn't so accessible the way it is today. And so, literally, let's say you're a parent who owns a company, and let's say it's a furniture building company, right? It's important if you want to pass that business on to your child to keep a relationship with that child, for that child to learn the craft from you. And then as a parent, you've given them something. What have you given them? You've given them knowledge. You've been their teacher.
Mm.
Whereas now, a teenager, a young person can get on YouTube and learn how to do most of the craft, most of the skill that they hadn't been able to learn before. A lot of it, right? If they really want to learn the skill, if they're really motivated, if they really want the craft. So when we start asking ourselves, what is the reason for young people to have a strong bond with people who are influencers? Maybe this is parents, coaches, like we've talked about. There has to be something other than knowledge that's being passed on in this new era we're approaching. And good. What is it if it's not knowledge? It is wisdom, like you're talking about, but it's also empathy. Think about all of the things that you would have done. Think about all of the things that you would have done as a teenager if you would have had the tools that Gen Z has. There's so many people that you would have thrown under the bus.
Silly decisions.
Not just silly decisions, but like I was in a rock band back when I was a teenager, and we were printing like thousands of copies and selling them out of the back of our car, playing every dive bar that you could possibly play to make it. And I'll tell you, we had lots of fun doing that, built lots of memories. But man, sometimes I look at this generation and I think like, man, if we would have had YouTube, man, if we would have had social media, you know? So there is this kind of like sadness, I think, that are in people who were motivated from older generations when they look at Gen Z. Like, man, y'all don't realize what you had. But the reality is that they are set up. And if we see Gen Z as that fresh, new, young generation who can actually take our dreams forward because they've got the energy now, and we can pass their own dreams forward, they're going to be thinking about the world in ways that we could never even imagine. Just think about the video games we used to play. Video games were about solving someone else's problem and accomplishing that. So you felt good because you solved someone else's game. They wrote the code and you solved it. Now we've got a generation of kids who are writing their own games.
Yep, writing their own code.
It's crazy because
experiences.
Because the technology is there. So when I say what are influencers passing on, what can you really pass on to this generation that has knowledge and tools that you never had? Come on. Are you Nostradamus? Are you like, who do you think you are? Right? Are you Einstein? No. Like none of us are these people for the most part. All right? There are people like that.
Yeah.
But every person has become significantly more intelligent once they got that smartphone put in their hand.
Yep.
And so if you think that knowledge is a thing that you're passing on, you really need to rethink your role in the life of young people.
Man, as you're just talking as well, man, I just feel it like this idea of the gift of relationship.
Man.
In the sense that one of the biggest things you have to offer a young person is your presence.
Yeah.
How many of them feel disconnected and like the world doesn't see them, like they're not known, like they're not special, that they don't mean anything to anybody.
Right.
In a world where they scroll through their Instagram feed or whatever it is and they constantly see all these people that have done all these accolades at their age, right? We got kids on YouTube that are however old making millions of dollars. And look at me, I'm still stuck in high school. I'm failing my algebra class and my parents aren't together or whatever else. And I just feel like I'm a nothing.
Yeah.
And so us as influencers, one of the most powerful gifts we can offer these Gen Zers is the gift of relationship. And in that relationship, they can feel like loved and cared for and unique, like they are seen, like there is something of value to them, right? Like we get our understanding of ourselves in context of relationship.
Yeah. Right,
you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like I get an understanding of myself as I interact with another human being, and that human being reflects that interaction back towards me, and I get a greater understanding of myself.
Yeah, it's great.
And so, like, there's amazing things that happen in the context of relationship, and they can only happen there. And that's something that we can gift them that doesn't require you to have a PhD in philosophy, doesn't require you to have all the answers, It just requires you to be present.
Absolutely.
And how many of these kids just want one-on-one mentors? They want someone who's going to know them. It harkens me back to the conversation we had at GCU with the college students there, and they were talking about how, this generation, man, like we were the participation trophy generation, right? Like we learned how to be a part of a team, and we learned how to aspire to be a part of something that was bigger than ourselves because we were participation trophies. But the problem was that we never felt known. We never felt cared for. We never felt different or special. And so now we're all striving to be different and special. And being famous doesn't matter now. What even if it means being infamous, it doesn't matter. But what I want to be is I want to be known. I want people to know my name. I want them to know who I am. I want to stand out. I want to be different. I want to be special. I want people to follow me. I want people to like me. I want people to tell me I am enough. And so you can do that. You can do that for a Gen Z. You can spend time with them or a group of them in whatever your context is, and you can let them know that they're enough. That is a powerful gift to give a young person. Right? Your presence and just letting them know, man, I see you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think most influencers, when they think about this, it can feel really heavy. And we're passionate people. We built a nonprofit around this. Okay. And so we understand that most people who are listening to this podcast, perhaps they're not going to be, as demonstrative about this situation or consuming as much content as we will. But to be honest, that's why we created this podcast. We quit because we had people like that in mind. And we realized that people are busy, teachers, coaches. How are you also going to be able to have time to go through classes that are going to teach you about Gen Z and how to understand them?
It's true, man.
Right? And there is this reality that we almost need a class to teach us how to relate to this new generation because the things that we had in mind, they are just rewriting the script on a lot of that stuff.
It's true.
And the situation here now, which is different from teenagers before in the past, is these teenagers have real power. And that phone puts power in their hand.
That's good.
Because they become an influencer themselves.
Dang.
Right? Like we were talking about this on the drive over here. Think about just like 20 years ago, and I think even just recently here in California, the governor signed the bill giving NCAA players the ability to monetize themselves while they're in college. Right? And so here's what's happening right now, and this is why you have to understand the young people that you're dealing with are different. They're more like the young people that founded this country. There were teenagers who were leading militaries, right? I think the founder of the U.S. Navy was like in his teens, 12 or 13, when he was like capturing boats. Like grown men were being captured by teenagers. I want to say like George Washington was 15 or something when he was the Virginia surveyor for the
psycho.
So just think about the labor laws in this country. We used to send 9 and 10-year-olds or however young they were off to the coal mines to harvest coal or to build Model Ts or whatever it was.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. It's true.
So we've created this diminished expectation in teenagers. They don't have the inability. We've created, through a social construct, this thing called teenagers or whatever it is, right? Or adolescence even. I'm not saying that there aren't things that are different emotionally, biologically. We recognize all those things. But when it comes to how society viewed what teenagers are capable of, they are showing us, they're like, hey, we're capable of a lot more than we've been given credit for. And it's almost like they're taking the power back. They're getting there. I mean, again, NCAA. Teenagers are realizing, whoa, my image has value. Where do they get those the understanding of the value of their image?
Social media.
Exactly.
Instagram,
all
Facebook,
of this.
Twitter.
So, and it's going to change.
TikTok, right?
The world's just going to change. And what it is you're going to have to deal with younger people in positions of authority.
That's good. That's really good.
And if you don't have humility to handle that and you don't want to change and you're not excited by this, the future's going to be real hard for you.
It's true. But I think we have a unique opportunity to really set up this next generation.
Absolutely.
To be successful, right?
Change the world.
Yeah, like really change the world.
Yeah.
For the better, I think, as well, too. And so...
will they change the world because of our influence, or will they change the world despite of our influence?
That's good, bro. That's good. And I think about, and not just to, being a negative Nancy or whatever else, but I think about the things in our world that are or do have the potential to lead Gen Zers astray, right? Think about the pornification of culture, how hypersexualized this generation is, and all the things that are happening. Polyamory, I'm thinking about, the reality that there's higher abuse rates now in relationships because of pornography, deaths even, thinking about drug use, vaping, marijuana use, you know what I'm saying, and all those different types of things that are happening, harder drugs that are being used. The ability for a Gen Zer to, sell their body easily through nude photos or through creating their own account on a porn site, you know what I'm saying? I'm 18, you know what I'm saying? And then doing whatever they do to make money or whatever. Once again, right? Wanting to be known, wanting to be different, wanting to stand out. That can, as well as it can come out in good ways, but it can also come out in very negative ways, right? I think about mental health and a massive issue that's becoming amongst this generation, right? That they really care about that.
That's true.
Like, what was it? 68% of Gen Zers will quit a job if they feel like it's affecting their mental health, right? You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, this is a huge issue for this generation. And I think like a lot of people in this generation are struggling with it. And there are a lot of different things that we're correlating it to, whether it be technology, whether it be to the breakdown of the home, you know what I'm saying? All those different types of things. I think ultimately there's a number of things, right? We can't put our finger on one thing, but I think it's like they're constantly connected, constantly dialed in, constantly, being bombarded with notifications and messages, and, there's never any downtime. And like it's crazy to think about. It's crazy to think about. How can you be the most connected generation ever and feel lonely? It's crazy, right? But they do.
And it's because of the way that our brains have been wired through social media. Think about before in the past when you did something. If no one in your community said, "Good job, buddy," they didn't say anything or give you any feedback on what you did, you just would go around your whole life not knowing if you were making progress or doing well. So what social media has done is it's given the people to act out their lives before the whole world and get affirmation about the things that they're doing instantly.
That's good.
And so if you're not giving that to your child in real life,
they can get it somewhere else.
They're going to get it somewhere else.
And then
so the only way that you can regain that in your teenager's life is that the attention that you're giving them is much superior than the attention that they might get on social media.
But that's the thing, right? It can be, because there's certain things that social can't give them, right? There's certain things that technology can't give them.
Oh, it has to. It has to.
I think
parents have to give this as well. Influencers have to.
Agree.
Because where we're going as society is our normal now is to be liked on social. That's why when I meet people in real life who are kind and who have social skills, I've even noticed this about myself just over the past few years. Like, wow, that person really sticks out to me. Why? Because they know how to act in public. I don't,
They know how to interact.
They know how to interact. They're warm.
That's good.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's just a coldness to looking at a piece of plastic or a piece of metal, and there's a warmth that can never be replaced by a phone or AI.
Experience of human interaction, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that cannot be replaced.
Never.
And ultimately, like, what we know about Gen Z is we're looking for experiences, right?
Yeah, real, authentic experiences.
You have experiences with other people in a specific context, right? We go to a concert together. We go to a movie together. We go out to eat together. We go to Disney World together, right? And we have this experience together, and it knits us. Like, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for those types of experiences, and they're either going to get them with you, or they're going to get them with somebody else, right?
Yeah.
And technology should supplement and support that relationship that already exists, but it doesn't create one that's not there.
Not at all. Not at all.
It creates a false sense of one, perhaps.
I think that part of the technology is that there's been a pendulum swing where we began to depend on technology so much where we've missed out. Like, man, there's a reason I valued looking at the lady who used to bag my groceries at the store. And I think this is something that like Chick-fil-A caught on to early, that people don't just want their goods. They want to be encouraged, in that moment. I think Dutch Bros definitely does do that as well. They realize that you have a small moment to be in a person's life. And if you want to build that person's affinity to come back to you for things, and we understand this on a business level, Dutch Bros, Chick-fil-A, that there's this personal touch, this emotional connection, this I care for you, I'm concerned for you thing that has to come across.
Yeah.
Because back to the issue we were talking about, why is this so important when Gen Zers are brutal consumers. If you mess up once, you're toast, you're done. Like, they're going to go to the place that's efficient, that's right, that's done with the most, like the feel
Especially
of whether,
when it comes to technology.
especially when it comes to technology, but the feel of that technology as to whether or not you had them in mind, like, they are just savvy consumers with that stuff, and they know how to tell whether you had them in mind.
That's good, man.
So if they know that on social, how much more do you think they know that in real life?
Dang. Yeah. That's one thing I know for sure. Like,
yeah.
One of the things I've always said to, like, and I always
high BS detector.
I always see that when I have conversations with Gen Zers. I'm like, man, I know that you guys can smell BS. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, you ever had an interaction with somebody and you just know they don't care about you? And they're like, yeah. Like, they know when you're not interested. They know when you're not concerned. They know when you really don't care about what it is they're saying right now, and they might keep saying it, but they have taken note of the reality that you are not paying attention and you really don't care about what it is that they have to say.
Right.
It's crazy, and they know. Like, that knocks you down a notch, man.
It sure does.
And I mean, it's not like there won't be times where that's ever the case, but I think more often than not, they need to know that you're paying attention. And I think this leads me into the last thing that I want to say concerning why your influence matters, and I think it's this reality of what we do, which is conversation, right? Because if Gen Z has got technology in front of them, and if the distribution of trust has changed, and so they don't care about people in positions of authority telling them what to do, and they can get the information they need at the touch of a button, and they can probably get it better than you can give it to them, then what do we do, right? How do we connect with them? And I think the key is conversation. Why? Because in conversation, there's no pipeline as much as there is two people or a group of people coming together and dialoguing about something that matters in order to discern how to think about that thing.
That's so
right?
Good, man.
And so what we do, or what we should be doing as influencers, is having conversations with Gen Zers. And in those conversations, building trust. And in these conversations, getting to know them and asking them why they believe what they believe and challenging their thoughts. But not in the sense of saying, hey, you're wrong. But in the sense of saying, like, hey, here's another way to think about it. Hey, here's an article to read. Hey, here's a video I watched one time. Hey, here's a blog. Hey, here's this group I'm a part of. Come join it, whatever else. Giving them options to consume things and to see things in the way that you see them and then make a decision on it themselves, right? These guys want to own their decisions and make their own decisions. And we're not going to change that. When we try and make decisions for them, it just turns them off and they get rebellious. So instead of us doing that, let's come alongside them. Let's partner with them, right? Let's encourage them in the things that they're doing well. Let's challenge the things that they're doing not so well with the wisdom and experience that we have, because we've lived life longer and we've seen some things, right? And we actually do have something to contribute to the conversation, right? And what we're hoping is that those couple of things that we hand off to them that stick help their life go in the direction it needs to in order for them to be successful, right? And that's the reality. And so when we think about it, we have to think about it in context of conversation. And then think about it this way. That's way less intimidating for us. It means you don't have to have all the answers. It means you don't have to always know the right thing to say. It means that you may come into a conversation and not even say anything. You may, once again, give them the gift of relationship, right? Give them the gift of your presence, being there with them as they wrestle and struggle through the difficult thing that they brought to you because you've been having conversations with them, because you've built trust with them, because they feel connected to you, because they feel like they're seen by you and that you're making a difference in their life. And then they finally open up and say that thing and talk about that thing that you've been dying for them to talk to you about for however long, right? And you have the opportunity now to really help them in that deep, profound way that you've always wanted to. The reality is, it's just going to take time. You know what I'm saying? We got to play the long game here. This isn't like, like a right now thing. Like, we got to play the long game. You want to be in their life for the next 30 years. You know what I'm saying? Not the next 5 minutes. And so if we're going to play the game that way, then we have to understand that it's gradually. You know what I'm saying? It's going to take time.
And this is why we delineated earlier between those of positional influence and those who have God-given influence or special influence, relational capital, whatever you want to call it.
Whatever.
Because some of those coaches, some of those teachers, social workers, whatever, they are only going to have a limited amount of time to be in that
It's
Gen
true.
Zer's life.
It's true.
But if you make the most of the time that you have, that's when you transition out of being just a positional person into a lifelong influencer in the life of a teenager, in the life of a young person.
There's people that influenced me growing up that I had to still talk to or still talk about.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like, man, that person had a significant impact on my life. Or, man, I still talk to that person and I still go back to them for advice because I trust them.
Yep.
And I trust because at a moment in my life where I was in crisis or a moment in my life where I didn't know what to do, this person gave me their presence and walked with me in the midst of whatever it was I was going through. And they won me for life.
And see, this is the point. The distribution.
They won me for life, man.
Exactly. This is the point. The distribution of trust now has even changed because you trust that person not because they're your coach anymore, but because of what they've deposited they deposited in your life over and over again. Now they have influence. They're trusted. Right?
That's good.
So it's this thing like the tentacles of this goes into so many different spheres.
It's true, man. And
it's just lifelong.
And I think sometimes that's the thing, right? Like we want to see the results of the conversations and the results of the things that we've done too quickly because we want it to affirm that we made the right decision. And what it might actually
it's about us at that point.
Exactly.
Did I do good? Am I a good parent? Am I a good coach? What have I done?
And then what it might take is that young person going away, making the wrong decision and recognizing, dang, my coach was right the whole time.
And I messed up.
My mom was right the whole time. And then coming back in the middle of that crisis and being like, hey, man, I need your help fixing this.
And those are much better lessons.
And I think about how many times there are probably been instances where, and if this has happened, you know what I'm saying? I think it's okay to just recognize it. But like maybe that young person did come back and you turned them away. And at that moment, you could have won him forever and you rejected him instead.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so it's like we have to play the long game here.
That's true, man.
We have to play the long game.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely.
We don't want to lose them. And so as we kind of begin to wrap up, I guess, today, what has Real Talk, what have we done because of this? Right?
Yeah. Well, a long time ago, we got into this thing
a long time ago in a galaxy far away.
In a galaxy far, far away. We got into this thing because we realized that there were quite a few people that were not in community with us that we wanted to have in community with us. And we understood that there were things that were hurdles to keeping that. Maybe they didn't rock with our specific type of religion, or they weren't, from the same state we were from, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so there were all these things that I noticed when this became a burden for me way back when. Whereas I always had this curiosity in other people that I wanted to get to know about who they were. Not that I wanted to conform them, but I wanted to bring them into my circle, that I genuinely wanted to bring them into my community.
Yeah.
And because I've known what that's like to feel like a person, my story is that my dad went through several things as a young man, raising a family. And one of the things that happened for him was he had to be incarcerated in prison for a number of years in my life. And I know for a fact, if it weren't for key influencers, people who looked at my life, who understood the situation that I was in, and was like, man, like, this kid needs some help.
Yeah.
There were people who stepped up. There were people who, I hope they felt a burden. I haven't really had a long conversation with a lot of the people in my life, but the thing that had key roles of influence, but I know that they influenced me in this way, and I stay in touch with them quite often, but I haven't necessarily said to them, I am where I am today because of you. But that's really what we're talking about. Being able to look back and say, there's people in this world who are where they are today because of me. Like, that's worth living for, man. That's worth giving your time, energy, effort, whatever. And so
I impacted the next generation.
So I passed something on, man.
That's good.
And so our platform, we transitioned away from just being an organization quite some time back that just gathered people together in spaces to really thinking through what it looked like to have influence long term, like you said.
Yep.
And for us, that meant building a digital platform. And what we realized that we could do is that we could put tools into the hands of other people who are influencers who maybe don't think the same way we do.
And maybe we'll never have the benefit or the privilege of meeting, but we can pass something on to them that perhaps they can use in their context in profound ways, or take it to another level, or whatever it is. To us, it's just kind of like, hey man, we feel like we have this gift and we want to share it. We want to share it with as many people as possible, because what matters is connecting with Gen Zers. It doesn't matter who does it, right? It matters that it's done, and it's done well, and it's done right. And it's done for their good.
Absolutely.
Right? And so that's why we've created what we've created. And so whether you're a part of our community or another community, it doesn't matter. The fact is, you need to get connected somewhere where you can get the help that you need and the tools that you need to impact this next generation in profound ways. There are guys out there like us who are studying and spending time with and doing all different types of things. And like, my advice would be to get connected with people who can help you to that end. But when you look at what we're doing, right, we've centered it around 3 things that we do together, right? So we get equipped. So we've created all these tools. They're on our membership platform or whatever. Well, really, it's not even a membership platform anymore, because it's completely free, right?
It's completely free.
We decided to make it free. So it's really just our platform, our tribe platform, right? You can go on there, rltkphx.org, log in. You have access to everything we've created. Videos of students with them sharing their stories, sharing what they've been through pertaining to certain topics, so you can gain context. Conversation kits that are done for you so that you can have the same conversations we've been having on campus for years. And one of the things about us is our organization is not necessarily Christian, but we're Christians ourselves. And so we share how we would end a conversation with a Gen Z, and that's with Christian perspective. But in the same way on campus, we spend time with tons of students who aren't believers, and we have dialogues and we listen to them. Whether you hold to our religious system or not, we want you to be a part of our community and dialogue with us, because we feel like everybody has something valuable to contribute in terms of reaching this next generation. So we want to get equipped together. We want to gain insight. Like, one of the most important things in terms of reaching this generation is to have empathy towards them, right? Is to understand them, to understand their plight, to understand their strengths and their weaknesses, so that you can actually have better, more informed conversation with them when you have it, right? And so that they can feel that care and concern as you communicate whatever it is you're going to communicate to them, right? You've got to gain insight on them. That's why we created the videos. That's why we're having the dialogues. That's why we're sharing a bunch of stuff in the community that we have on Facebook, right? And so then the last thing is obviously growing together, which ties into the community. We want to be able to encourage each other in our successes and our failures, and discover things together, right? So we can continue to improve, continue to grow, continue to develop better tools,
make connections.
Make connections together. There may be things that people in the group meet each other and go on to create other things, right? And so that's what we want to see happen. We really just want to be a space where people can come, feel safe, get connected, get tools that they need, have questions answered that they need answered, and go on to really be people who are prepared to be people of influence on this next generation, right? Generation Z. Yeah,
absolutely, man. I was just thinking earlier just about why we do all this. And for me personally, the idea of being able to influence a person's life who is in a position where they feel like no one pays attention to them, no one cares about them, and to be able to see that person maybe brought out of the dark space that they're in and brought into a community, brought into a gathering with other people. You know, like Jesus had this saying, like, he leaves the 99 to go after the one.
That's good, bro.
You know what I mean? And that always resonated with me as a Christian, as a person who's a believer in Jesus, that what it means for me to be a Christian isn't that I build my community and isolate other people from it because they don't fit in. It's that I leave my community and go find people who don't fit in and bring them into it. That's the difference. And so, love them and care for them and accept them and allow God to take his time in the development of whatever he wants to do in their life. And so this community... That's what we're
doing with Gen Z, man.
That's what we're doing. And so, you know, sometimes we think of, man, I got to bring people around to my point of view. Well, if God is God and he wants to do that, he can do a pretty good job of that without you. But he can do a job of it with you, too.
That's good, and he wants to.
And he wants to. And so when I think about that, I try to think of when I engage people as a Christian, what do I want them to say about God if they left me? And I want that to be, something that we feel that this wasn't a whole lot of John that they encountered, but this was a lot of truth. This was a lot of goodness. This was a lot of love that I experienced.
That's good, man.
It's kind of how I try to think about conversation, engaging people, and why I do what I do, why we have conversation.
That's good, bro.
All
right. Episode 15 in the books.
Yeah.
RLTKPHX, Real Talk Phoenix. So stoked that you logged in to listen or jumped on the audio podcast or whatever you did. So thank you.
Yeah.
You will find us under RLTKPHX at Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram.
Remember it at that time.
All of those spaces, you'll find us there. Give us a follow, give us a comment, whatever. This is a dialogue. Hopefully we started a conversation. We don't want to end the conversation. We want to begin it.
And we're having these conversations regularly on lives. If you're following us and you notice that Jordan's live, tune in, listen, drop comments. We love all of that.
Jump
Engage
in our
with
Facebook
you guys.
group, whatever influence in Generation Z. We'd love to have you be a part of our community. And like I said, if it's not our community, find one to be a part of. And if you are a part of one, invite other people into it, right? We love you guys. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.
Peace.